All right, good evening. It is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 2026. This is the time and place for the May committee meeting of the Northern Lebanon School District Board of Directors. We are meeting as a committee of the whole. I call this meeting to order. I would just like to announce that the board met in executive session immediately prior to this committee meeting to discuss personnel matters. And with that, we will begin our committee meeting. First item is presentations. There are no presentations for this evening, so we will move directly into public comment. We do have public comment this evening, and I will just remind everyone that according to Board Policy 903, all individuals wishing to participate in an open board meeting were asked to register their intent with the board secretary by 3 o'clock today. Participants will be recognized by the presiding officer, that's me. You must preface your comments by an announcement of your name and group affiliation if applicable. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 4 minutes duration. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question school directors individually. I would also note that over the last couple of months, I have been very lenient towards some comments that have been directed towards some employees, and I'm going to be very careful about that this evening. I do reserve under 903 the right to interrupt or terminate a participant's statement when a statement is too lengthy, personally directive, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. I don't anticipate that that's going to happen, but I just want to make sure that that is clear for the record this evening. First item for public comment this evening is Christina Ingram. Ms. Ingram?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, hi, I'm Christina Ingram. This time I'm going to share more of my concerns about the conflict of interest issues and relevant board policies. In the local board procedures, it says that the principles for governance and leadership are signed by all of the board members. Under Act Ethically, it says to avoid actual or perceived conflict of interest. Under Evaluate Continuously, it says to make data-informed decisions. In my opinion, these principles are not being followed. If someone goes back and reads the meeting minutes, most of the decisions make the board look bad. However, I went back and started watching all of the recordings and matching them to what I see in person. I noticed that it was actually an administrative issue. It is evident that there is an imbalance of power between the board and some of the admin staff. I have seen over and over again in the recordings when the superintendent recommends something to the board. If the board members discuss it and the vote is not likely to be in his favor, he then suggests creating a committee. These committees essentially remove the opinions of the board members beyond those 3 who join, remove oversight, and remove the public review. I have noticed the heavy push to influence the board's decisions. The admin staff is not providing documents with sufficient time for review, cutting board members off before they complete their questions or statements, and are not providing answers to important questions. I don't know if all board members are aware of how many policies are shifting the board duties back to the admin staff. I find that the most important example of this is not only appointing the business manager as the treasurer, but also having her acting as the board secretary. I find conflicts of interest or delegation to the admin staff in each of the following policies. Due to the limited time allowed to speak, I will email the specific information for each policy and post it publicly. In comparison with other schools, our policies are lacking. Policy 601, fiscal objectives, 603, budget preparation, 608, bank account, 609, investment, 610, purchase subject to bid quotation, 611, purchase budgeted, 616, payment of bills, 617, petty cash, 619, district audit. The purpose of the school board is to provide local governance, policymaking, monitor district process, and ensure compliance with state and federal laws. Yes, it is important to work efficiently and effectively with the admin staff, but it is also important to maintain a system of check and balances. I encourage you to watch some of the recorded meetings outside the lens of your own eyes. Maybe then you will see what the public sees. I am one of many who voiced this concern. I understand in the next meeting that there will be a vote to appoint the next treasurer. I hope you all review all the conflicts of interest concerns and reconsider the appointment to include one of the board members and to reclaim fiduciary oversight. I also pray that you will review and update the board policies that delegate board duties to admin staff. Even when you think you might not get the majority of the vote, standing your ground and making a true vote matters. We need true leaders, ones who ask the questions, make the suggestions, speak the truths, not people who follow the admin staff blindly. The board is supposed to make the decisions, not have the admin staff tell you what to do. If they don't provide you with enough information or time to make an educated vote, why not table it for discussion until you do? To end on a positive note, thank you to those responsible for maintaining the board meeting YouTube channel, and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Okay, next public comment is Mara Diffendahl.
Good evening. My name is Mara Diffendahl. I'm just here to speak on behalf of my neighbor who couldn't make it tonight. Robert and Franklin Gibson sent you each an email expressing their concerns regarding the potential tax increase. As of the time of this meeting before you tonight, only one of you has taken the time to address the financial concerns in regards to the budget. I understand that the singular response that the district is facing rising costs, future obligations, charter school expenses, anticipated CTC renovation, as well as a bunch of other things, is part of the reason why the increase is being placed. However, their central concern remains unanswered. The question was not why the district believes additional revenue was necessary. The question was specific as to what steps the board is going to take to protect the residents who are already struggling under the weight of rising costs. Many taxpayers are not experiencing their household budgets in percentages. They are experiencing them in groceries, prescriptions, utilities, home repairs, vehicle costs, and fixed incomes that do not rise at the same pace. For residents who are elderly, disabled, unemployed, widowed, caring for family members, or living on a limited income, even a tax increase that appears reasonable from a district budget perspective can create real hardship at a household level. I understand the district has obligations, residents have obligations too. The concern is when every institution responds to rising costs by passing those costs down to the residents, the people at the bottom have nowhere left to pass the burden. With that in mind, they respectfully ask again the following questions. What specific actions will the board consider to reduce the burden on taxpayers before approving future increases? For example, will the board commit to deeper public budget reviews before future tax increases? Will the board identify specific areas where costs can be reduced, delayed, or reconstructed? Will the board provide clear public explanations of what has already been cut or considered before asking taxpayers for more? Will the board advocate publicly and consistently for state-level reform so rural property owners are not left carrying an unfair share of the school funding? Will the board consider the impact on fixed income or low-income residents as part of its decision-making processes before approving future increases? We are not asking the district to ignore its responsibility to students. We are asking that the district also recognize its responsibility to the residents who fund it, including those who may be quietly struggling to remain in their homes. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Okay, next is Molly Lum, Ms. Lum.
Good evening. My name is Molly Lum, and I'm here to follow up on my discussions regarding the escrows being held by Bethel Township. Multiple times it has been said that this money would make a difference within the budget, which is what led to my initial frustration as Northern Lebanon was not doing all that they needed to do for the money to be released. After I first spoke and brought up the escrow, it was stated to me after the meeting that Northern Lebanon has in fact done its due diligence to obtain the release of this money, and that it was Bethel Township's engineer, Matthew Mack, who was ignoring the requests. The next day, I completed a right to know for all inspection requests sent to Matthew Mack that were claimed to exist. When I first received an inspection request, or the answer, the only thing I was provided with were emails between Northern Lebanon and Steckbeck, their own engineer, discussing the escrow. These originated in November of 2025 and resulted in Steckbeck even stating that Northern Lebanon must be the ones to request the funds per the municipal code. My response to the answer was appreciation for the insight of their conversation, but that my request wasn't really fulfilled. I was told there were emails sent to Matthew Mack that were ignored, and that's what I had wanted. I sent that email response on April 2nd and received an answer just before the last meeting, April 14th at 6:12 p.m. I decided to refrain from sharing the last paragraph of my speech until I could do my own follow-up. I was provided with one singular email sent to Matthew Mack in January of 2025. I will first state that I do not define due diligence or proper follow-up as sending just one email since the last reduction in 2023. Nonetheless, Matthew Mack had responded to this email the same day requesting additional reports, that he stated he would schedule an inspection, and asked about the stormwater basin as the downstream property owner was still calling him often. So not only was the email not ignored as claimed by Northern Lebanon, but an inspection was also supposed to be scheduled. I was curious why it never took place. So I called Bethel and Matthew Mack Engineering, and there was in fact a reason why the inspection never took place. That was due to the frequent phone calls Matthew Mack received from the downstream property owner. In order for the stormwater basin to be operating properly, the under drain within the basin needed to be shut, and an inspection would have to take place after a rainfall to make sure it was draining correctly. So with it being that the property owner called after every single rainstorm, stating that water still constantly flowed through his property, it meant the under drain was still open. Therefore, there was nothing to inspect as you couldn't see if it functioned as it should without it being closed. This was ongoing in 2025, and Mack made sure to provide that information bare minimum to Steckbeck, but also stated the homeowner kept engineers, township, and the school district informed. Email requests for the release of funds were not ignored. Escrows are not just a slow process, as stated in your February of 2025 meeting. They are actually rather quick, and as soon as the inspection is completed, the request goes before the Board of Supervisors at their next meeting. The work tied to the escrow simply needs to be completed and done properly for the release of funds to occur, and that is something that Northern Lebanon did not do, as proven during the March inspection a few months ago, where the drain was once again noted to still be open. I sure do hope the under drain has been since shut so the inspection can happen and we can pursue a full release. It is also quite discouraging that Northern Lebanon is attempting to back out of their commitment to complete the sidewalk along Airport Road. A deal was made between Bethel Township and Northern Lebanon back when the elementary school plans were going through. In exchange for some waivers to plan requirements, Northern Lebanon agreed to complete the portion of the sidewalk from your property to Shirk Drive. It was contemplated, per the letter submitted to Bethel from Northern Lebanon on April 19th, 2026, that back in May of 2023, the school thought about completing the work or simply donating to the project. They ultimately withdrew their offer to donate and stated they will complete the work. Bethel Township has documented in their meeting minutes from June of 2025 that Dr. Messinger stated even if the PennDOT grant fell through, the district would still complete the sidewalk. Now here we are 3 years later, and the school is attempting to back out of the work and just donate toward the project, as it appears to be more challenging than they imagined. So as a taxpayer, it is hard for me to take anything at face value when words, commitments, and agreements aren't fulfilled. I doubt Bethel Township will withdraw the waivers they gave you as the work is completed. But you have now delayed this project 3 years, and now the township is requesting to see some action and provided a deadline, and you want to go back on your word. We seem to have money and time for a new tennis court, but not the safety of our students walking to school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Ingram, you had indicated that you had another item that you wanted to discuss. Is that still your intent? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Christina Ingram again. I am discussing my concerns for the tax increase at the maximum the state will allow. Now, if you ask where was I a few years ago when the increases were at 6.5%, that is what initially made me start paying attention. As I was watching this year's presentation and seeing the immediate vote for 4.2%, which was not included on the initial presentation, it lit a fire in me. Thanks to that, my new hobby is reviewing NL financial documents. I will continue to share my findings as I go. I heard many say that the vote doesn't matter if the majority of the board members vote against you, and that, in my opinion, is incorrect. In cases like now, when someone goes back to look at historical votes, you can identify when someone voted truthfully. Even when they were the only one, it matters. For instance, in 2023, when the Act 1 index maximum was 5.1%, the superintendent suggested pursuing an exception to the state, utilizing special education expenditures. Even though on the presentation 5/9/23, it indicated that the budget was balanced. The presentation by the business manager made it seem like the goal was to catch up with the millage rate of the other schools. Shouldn't you be proud that the budget continued to be balanced even with the lowest rate in the county? Why are you so driven to pull the majority of the revenue from the taxpayers when there are many other areas that could be pursued or budgeted in? The state approved 7% exception, but the board approved 6.5% increase. Stacy Murray was the only board member who voted against it, and ironically is the board member most involved with the special education community. Stacy, I thank you for that vote. Mr. Nam made a statement at that meeting that real estate taxes should be illegal. Although turning around and voting to approve above the maximum amount seems a bit two-faced, however, I do agree with the illegal statement. With all of the bills entered into the state to eliminate real estate taxes, wouldn't it be in the best interest of the district to get ahead of those changes and steer away from the reliance on real estate taxes? It's just a matter of time until they figure out how to reconfigure the revenue and one is approved. If we are the school in the county with the lowest percentage, wouldn't it mean that we would be the least impacted during that change and would be a step ahead of the other schools? I shared comparison of the budget revenue document with 4 local schools. One of the funding areas was rental of the facilities, 6910. Other schools had budgeted revenue upward of $250,000, and all budgeted $5,000. I included links to the website provided for those schools. Our school's website is very poorly laid out with only a link to sign into an account and no cost information. I had to dig into the board docs abyss to find the fee document. You would think that after spending over $90 million on this school, you would make more of an effort to use those facilities and generate revenue. But then, while watching the old meeting recordings, I discovered the problem. During an 8/1/23 board meeting at 1 hour and 21 minutes, Mr. Messinger says, I quote, "I think it's a philosophy from a board standpoint of the facilities in terms of, how available do you make the facility for outside groups?" And then suggested that other schools do not open their facilities to outside groups or they inflate their prices to deter them. If you don't hear the manipulation in that statement, then I am not sure that I can help you. Again, as I stated regarding the conflicts of interest, the board was not leaning in his favor and he suggested a smaller committee. I do appreciate the conversation amongst the other board members who expressed the value of renting the facility, yet the policy remained hidden and not presented openly to the public. The fee schedule was tentatively adopted and then the issue seemed to fall to the wayside. I pray that you will reconsider establishing policies or a better website to encourage the use of these expensive facilities that all of us paid for. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Right. Okay, we will move then to items for discussion for this evening. There is no voting items this evening, so tonight's committee meeting will be to establish the agenda for next week and to determine what will be on discussion and what will be on consent calendar. So let's just move into the items for discussion, number 5.
Yeah, just approval of minutes, and there is nothing for number 6 adoption tonight. That'll be for next week.
Okay, any
Numbers-
questions? Okay, let's move to human resources.
Number 7, starting at 7.1, it would be to approve Riley Cox as a long-term substitute, prorated to fill the 4th grade vacancy of Katie Baumberger, retroactive to April 30th, 2026 through the last day of the 25-26 school year. We do have a resignation of a general education aide at the elementary school for personal reasons. We have a number of hirings for next year already. Right now, currently fully staffed for professional staff. The board has a document in front of them with those individuals, just telling you a little bit about them as individuals and who they're replacing. But those 6 individuals will be joining us at the beginning of the 26-27 school year. We have 2 sabbatical leaves next year, and we have long-term substitute to fulfill those. Riley Smith will be an elementary classroom teacher for us, and Kayla Luciotti also will be an elementary classroom teacher. We do have 1 coach listed for the month of May. That coach is an assistant field hockey coach that would be joining us for the fall season. A few additional extended school year staff, paraprofessionals substitute, and then our nurses who cover the extended school year during the summer. And then the treasurer that was already mentioned earlier.
Okay, do we have any questions regarding the items discussed, 7.1 through 7.7? And I know that 7.7 will be on discussion for next week. Is there any desire to move any of the other items, 7.1 through 7.6, into discussion, or do you have any questions for Dr. Messinger? No? Okay. Regarding 7.7, election of the school board treasurer, since this has been raised as an issue of a potential conflict of interest, I think it is important to note publicly that it is a common practice within the school districts of Pennsylvania to assign the business manager as the as the school board treasurer. It is also common that a school board director might be appointed to it as well. In the past, we have appointed Ms. Martin as the school board treasurer in addition to her duties as the business manager. She is currently serving as the interim secretary due to the fact that our secretary is on medical leave. That is also by policy. I have asked the solicitor, is the solicitor on? I've asked the solicitor to provide an explanation, if you might, as to the legal sufficiency of having the school board treasurer serve as the business manager serving as a school board treasurer, not as legal advice to the board. That would be done in public or in private, but as just a public explanation for the steps that we have taken in the past.
Yeah, so good evening. I'm Seth Byers. I'm here for Attorney Say tonight. I'm also with Saxon Stump in our education group. So historically in the past, we've advised that the treasurer and business manager should be the same individual because many of the obligations that the treasurer needs to perform specifically under the school code are typically performed in practice by the business office. And the position of treasurer is also a lot of work that can end up creating a pretty significant burden on a school board member who may be elected to the position. So it's perfectly legally acceptable for purposes of efficiency and ensuring that the business office has the clear legal authority to perform its financial responsibilities to have the business manager serve as the treasurer for the board.
Great, thank you, Mr. Byers. Any questions at all regarding that? Any discussion among the board? Can you please speak into the microphone?
Since we have the attorney with us, is there any conflict as far as the secretary acting as the treasurer when the treasurer's not here, and then the treasurer acting as a secretary when the secretary is not here? Is there any conflict in that way at all?
Generally, one individual is not permitted to hold both positions. Given the interim nature, I don't see a significant problem with that. However, it may be advisable to have the board secretary be appointed to another person once Ms. Martin is elected as the treasurer. But that's I was unaware of the secretary and treasurer issue here tonight. So that's something that we can look into a little bit more, but that's my preliminary answer.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Discussion? Yes.
So I've noticed that some other districts have a finance committee as part of their board, that's kind of how we do some of our other committees. And, that might be an idea that maybe our board could explore. I certainly think that Ms. Martin does a pretty good job as the treasurer and the business manager. But, that might be a way to feel like the board has more information, I will say, about doing that, is to have a finance committee possibly.
Sure. Okay,
So I'd like to explore that opportunity.
okay, great, thank you. We'll do so. Anything else? Okay, I would, with our solicitor's input, and we will be in touch this week to make sure that we're following legal procedure. I would propose that we put on the agenda for next week to reelect Ms. Martin as the treasurer for the school board effective July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027. Are there any other ideas or any other suggestions among the committee?
Just as far as a secretary would go, would you want a board member to do that?
The
part of it?
secretary's job is really fairly administrative. So for example, just during the course of the week, it'd be contacting, there's a lot that would go to creating the agenda. So I think it's probably better to have it as somebody administrative. I don't know that any of the board members have a lot of time, but I mean,
No,
we're willing to
if it was
consider it.
conflict of interest,
Sure.
and it's only temporary.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one way that we can help.
I think it's worth looking, maybe this week we can communicate with Dr. Messinger and see if there's to fill in the interim secretary position. Maybe we can take a vote on that to assign a different individual for that job.
Seth, can it be an administrator? We typically have an administration in the audience. Can it be an administrator who fills in? We are hoping to get our secretary back in June, but there's still some medical hurdles there, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, the board secretary can be an administrative member.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Yep. Okay. All right, great. Any other discussion? Okay, then we will proceed. We will put it on the agenda for next week to appoint Leanne Martin as treasurer for school board effective July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027 at a salary of $0, and we will put that on discussion. Great, thank you. Great, and thank you for the input. Thank you for the ideas. Appreciate that. All right, so we will move now to item 8, budget and finance.
Yeah, the typical cash disbursements will be listed, as will the student activity account. And then we get into the CTC budget. This is an annual thing that the CTC provides us. The synopsis is there, their budget is there. That is, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Director Klein, did you have anything you wanted to add to that one?
No, I mentioned at a previous board meeting that the budget to budget increase of the CTC is 3.72%. We pay approximately 11% of that budget, and our increase to the CTC would be 3.74%.
What was our share again? I'm sorry. 11.
11.2.
11.2. Thank you. Okay.
Along, did you,
Um,
if you want to move that to
Yeah,
discussion, we can.
8.1 through 8.3. Any questions further for either Dr. Messinger or Director Klein? Any desire to move any of those three to the discussion agenda for next week? Okay, hearing none, then we'll leave those on consent. Okay.
Okay, the articles of agreement, I suggest in case there are questions, there's a few people that are at the ag banquet tonight not with us. That is probably something we could move to discussion. Most of the changes to the articles of agreement are just language that needed to be updated. PA code that hadn't been updated since 1996. We also had situation where they were using the wrong name for the Lebanon County CTC. And for paperwork purposes, we want to get that consistent in the articles. The big thing that impacts us, and it will only impact us if they move forward with a renovation, is this whole discussion that we talked a little bit about, and whether or not market value versus ADMs, average daily membership, or in the case of what we're proposing, what the school districts are proposing, the board at the CTC is suggesting a 50-50 split, compromise between the two. When the initial renovation was done, it was done under market value. At that point in time, Lebanon was in a very different financial situation in terms of their market value. Bethlehem Steel was still in operation, and values were way higher than they are now. And so they're in a different situation. The next set of articles changed it to ADMs. But in order to be fair to everyone, a compromise was reached and voted on and approved at the CTC board of a 50-50 split. So that is the language that is reflected in these new articles, a 50-50 split. That number for us brings our projected amount down over the maximum that I had shared a while back. If they did a renovation, however, it would be more than what the ADM model would be. Now, they have since gone back, as I think I mentioned last time, and they have re-looked at it, and they've brought the total cost down almost 16 million, I think it is. which also impacts. So when we were initially looking at 1.3 to 1.5 million, that has come down. So the new articles would reflect that 50/50, which I said is the big change. But for us, because of those two factors, the numbers are actually better than the projected numbers were a couple of months ago when we began this discussion.
Okay. Is there pretty solid unity among the districts, that vote?
The vote was unanimous.
Okay.
We believe there may be one district that is still debating whether or not they will approve it once they take it back to their district.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay. Any desire to move that to discussion?
I think we should, given that some members are not here.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think we should, given that there
Okay.
are some members that are not here this evening.
Okay. Very good. So item 8.4 will be on discussion for next week. All right. Okay. And then yes. Okay. 8.5.
Yeah, the proposed final budget, which will obviously move to discussion, but Ms. Martin's prepared to do a presentation tonight on that.
All right, you can go to the next slide a while. Thank you, guys. So this is our annual budget timeline that I review with you just so that you know what's coming in the next few weeks. To start off with, next week would be adopting the proposed final budget. Then the next day, the final budget is available for public inspection. It is already uploaded to board docs. However, we will also post it on our website. And of course, there's always a traditional paper copy in the office if anyone prefers to stop by and review that. Sorry. Then come in June, we adopt the final budget and we approve the homestead farmstead exclusion. We did just receive those numbers. And while the total funding for the homestead farmstead did go down slightly, Northern London received about $2,000 less. Our homestead farmstead with initial calculations looks to be the exact same amount that was for this current year. So it worked out that there was less homestead numbers this year. So I just wanted to go over that quick. I don't have the final calculation prepared, but I will by next month. But I wanted to let you know where we were at with the funding because I know there's been talk about the decrease. And then obviously the final budget is due to PDE within 15 days of when the school board approves it. So I'll take care of filing that with PDE. And the latest we could submit that to PDE would be July 15th. They want our budgets prior to that date. Okay, next slide. This is just to review. Some of these slides are the same ones that we've seen before, and I just always like to review these and make sure that we're familiar with the terms. So at Northern London School District, we have the following funds: the general fund, which is the general operations of the district, where we do all of our payroll, supply purchasing, day-to-day operations of the district. Then we have the food service funds, which covers the operation of the cafeterias and the payment to our food service company. And now this one up here, the capital reserve fund, is due to the school district. We had one previously when we did construction projects and there was no activity going through it after the construction project. So it did get closed a few years ago. We are looking to reopen a capital reserve fund and use that frequently. So the capital projects funds for construction activity money would eventually transfer over into that for future capital projects. And also the assigned balance of the general fund would transfer in there to start out the capital reserve fund for any future capital projects that we have going on. It will make tracking of those projects very simple and transparent in that one fund. And then we also have always had the debt service fund. So that is where we transfer money in just to pay our bond payments annually. And then of course the agency funds where we are the fiduciary responsible for student activity funds such as student council and other student related activities. Next slide, please. This is the ending fund balances. It's updated. As you can see, we still are carrying the Fredericksburg Sale Exchange. I believe we have one more year of that. And the committed funds for the healthcare you can see, continue to grow interest there. Then we have the assigned capital projects that I just referenced with the escrow money and the 3.3 and interest in those. And also, obviously, I estimated for the tennis courts, which hasn't been paid out yet. And then the unassigned fund balance as well. And recall that we transferred the 3.3 million over to construction activity this fall. This is the I'm sorry, I can barely read that, but I did create it, so I think I can recall it from memory. But this is the basic budget equation. It's the process that we go through for the budget. When you look at the PDE 2020 that is submitted, it's really thick. So what you'll see is that they start with a prior year's ending fund balance, which I just reviewed with you on the prior slide. And then they add in the estimated revenue budget. So the revenue budget gets added into that. And that totals together, and it's called the total available funds for the district for the budgeted year. And then obviously the formula goes down through and it takes out less expenditures. So all the expenses are backed out of those total available funds. And then it shows you your ending fund balance on the PDE 2028, which is the actual budgeted form that you see there available for review. And obviously the district's goal is to always have that greater than zero and to have a balanced budget for the district. Next slide, please. Thanks, Tyler. So moving on to the 26-27 budget, this is the total revenues are right under 55 million. And then you can see the total expenses are the exact same number, right under 55 million as well. And this is using a 4.2% tax increase, which means we have a balanced budget for the year that we are looking to approve. Next slide. This is the budgeted revenues. I just broke it out here so that you could see. The real estate with a 4.2% tax increase, we are looking at about $27.8 million, and that makes up 51% of our total revenue for the district. Then other local comes in. So other local is comprised of our EIT taxes, interest on our money. That makes up about 10% of the revenue budget. And then, of course, there's our state funding at about 38%. And this year's budget for state funding does include the governor's preliminary funds. The preliminary funding. Typically, you've heard Dr. Messinger and I talk about flat level funding. Some years we did add smaller amounts in when we thought we were going to get some. We feel fairly confident this year that the governor's budget preliminary numbers will be approved and come through to us. There's talk about that, obviously, that we've heard from other superintendents and also our liaison groups like PASBO. So those numbers are included this year in that budget. And then, of course, we had the federal funds that come to the school district, and those numbers are slightly declining each year if you take notice of that. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this is just for those who prefer to see it in a pie chart form broken out. Obviously, I had the actual numbers and percentages on the previous slide. This is for those of you who are just more visual. Next slide, please. This is something that we show every year. This is the Lebanon County real estate tax millages for 24 and then also for 25-26. And you can see the percentage increase that was approved last year by each school district. We're up there at the top, obviously, with a lower millage rate and also a 2.7% increase that we use for 25-26 budget. This is a slide too that we repeat every year, and this shows the impact the average Northern Lebanon School District homeowner. The average home assessed value is $186,000 approximately in Northern Lebanon School District. And you can see they're going across at the 0, 2.5, 3, 3.75, and then also the 4.2% and the impact that it has on the average homeowner. And it's at 4.2%, it's $139 for the year to the average homeowner. I believe it comes out to $1,525 or something like that. Sorry, I can't recall the number right off the top of my head what it is per month. But that $139 is the annual amount to the average homeowner. So this is also a slide where I show the LERTAs. As you can see, the percentage of assessed improvements that are coming onto the tax roll and where we get our taxes from is increasing each year. Obviously, it increases by 10%. We have one up there that has reached 100%. That'll roll off. You won't see that next year. And the others are continuing to increase each year.
Sorry, 1 second. Can we move the text box? Is there any way so we can see? Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the total number there.
So we'll be completely through with those LERTAs in 6 years?
The ones that remain, yes. I believe that there might still be one or two that were approved that could roll on.
I see. Okay. Okay, great. And I think the monthly number is 1158.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
And just to clarify that, they roll on because they haven't started.
Correct. There are some that were approved years ago. Like I said, I've always said,
We
you won't
haven't
hear me
approved
recommended
alerts
Lerta.
since I've been here.
Yeah, they were approved probably about 10 or 11 years ago, and they might still have those out there. And when they do improvements on it, they're still paying the taxes on the land. They never do not pay taxes on the land. So it's not like we lose taxes. It's just once they build those assessments on there, then it's done at a reduced amount for the improvements.
Is there a way to see how much that goes up each year? Like, so the ones that say 70% will be 80% next year,
Mhm.
is that correct? So is there a way to compare year to year for, if we get this year, what next year, like how much more we will be getting? Just to, like,
When it rolls
visual?
on? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and obviously the tax rates change, so each year it's different based on the millage rate. But yes, so I mean, the math there is you take the 140 million divided by, because that's what's over on the right, that's the taxable side. So your 140 million divided by 1,000 times the current millage rate. And then I can show you exactly, I have it all laid out already, what till they go until they're all expired. I can easily give you that sheet and you can look it over and see.
Okay, and I had one other question, one of your earlier
Yep.
slides. What is the difference between adopting the proposed in May versus adopting the final? Is it just that it's available to the public? Like nothing is actually changing?
Right, it gives the public time to view it, and because this is one of the large responsibility of the school district and it has such an impact with the real estate taxes, it's just PA school code that it gets approved in May and then again in June.
Okay, so the proposed doesn't mean anything changes, it's just the initial.
Right, it could change if you wanted to as a board, but no, it just, most of the time it is the same budget being approved twice.
Thank you.
Okay, any other alerter questions while it's up here? Okay, cool. Thank you, Tyler. This is expenses broken out for the 26-27 budget. And you can see the percentages there and the exact numbers as well. And I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that salaries, benefits, debt, and now transportation isn't broken out in here, but if you add up those four things, salary, benefits, the debt payment, and transportation, that is almost 78% of our budget. It's 77% of our budget is those items. Next slide. And again, there's the pie chart broke out in lots of colors. Thank you. And these are just some budget notes, some things I wanted to draw attention to in our budgets. So obviously the budget includes our building and grounds equipment schedule, a truck replacement for a new truck for next year, and also replacing some of their equipment that is coming to the exhaust of its usable life. So they'll be replacing some of those items, and they try to replace those on a regular schedule so that it's not a large impact of many things breaking at one year onto our budget. So it kind of rolls it through. So it's an even budget that is easier for us to anticipate and include in our budget. This also includes the annual tech purchases of laptops, Chromebooks, and iPads that we do. And then also a speech therapist, as we are looking to hire a speech therapist in the school district because our current speech therapist that is on a contract is retiring and will be missed. So we need to find a replacement so that we can service those students. And one other area I wanted to draw attention to was our healthcare budget. I felt that it was very important to have a balanced budget this year. It took a lot of work and crunching of the numbers. But one area that we did have a good year in was healthcare. When it came in from our consultant, we were one of the lowest school districts in the county for an increase, and which means we had a very good year. So that our budgeted numbers only includes $65,000 increase, and that does leave us with some exposure to some risk there where we could run over budget for those numbers. However, I feel confident in our committed healthcare in the general fund ending balance. We have over $1 million in there. I will be recommending in June to move another $200,000 into that to be used for healthcare. So I felt that that was one area where we could do just a slight increase this year and kind of have a risk there in exchange for a balanced budget for the school district. So that is one area I just wanted to draw attention to, but I also feel that we have done our due diligence and been very responsible about having those committed funds for the healthcare.
What has been the historical treatment of the healthcare expenses? What do we typically average?
So we've averaged, we've varied greatly, but typically they tell us to do anywhere from 8 to 12%. So a lot of times in the budget, I'm running those numbers. When it came back from our consultant this year, they did do a 6% increase, and we are still slightly lower than that, but that was very favorable. There was one that was as high as a 40% increase compared to where they had been budgeted previously. So I felt, I was very proud of our district, and our healthcare numbers, which obviously you don't have much control over those, but that was a good sign. And that's why I felt that it was okay to budget these numbers this year.
Okay, thank you.
Could we get some clarification on the speech therapist? So from my understanding, we currently contract someone for those services, but I believe if I heard correctly, that we're getting to the point now where we have more students who need that, where it's basically we're better off hiring somebody rather than continuing contracting services. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I'm going to look for Dr. Messinger for a little bit of help for this. Kelly and I briefly spoke about this.
Yeah, and she can talk about it some more next week too, if there's a question. Yes, additional she would have needed to add a fourth day if that was, if she was returning. And from a cost standpoint, you just get to a point where if you're going to contract for services like that, you get to a point where having someone on staff rather than doing the contract will allow us to better service the kids. Yeah.
Thank you.
At minimal, it really, the cost increase becomes benefits. More so salary wise, they'll probably make a little less, but benefits takes the total increase up slightly.
Right.
But it's actually better service for the students.
Yes, we'll have them full time. So, we'll have them for that fifth day. If we need to, a lot of the times elementary is where you really get hit with the speech kids, but we are having more and more going over there now. But you have the flexibility then to do something. If we need more support over here, we can go back and forth. A little easier to have relationships with parents because you can spend a little more time than a contracted person who's in and out. But really, from a cost standpoint, once you get to that fourth day, that was kind of our break-even point for.
Okay. Thank you.
So these continue to be the major cost drivers of our budget every year. Obviously, I already shared with you that salary benefits, debt payments, and transportation are 77% of the budget, so that's why those are up there at the top. The CTC renovation cost is an impact for this budget and will be for the next few budgets as we build those costs in, and hopefully we'll have a little more clear answers of exactly what the cost will be to us in coming soon. Charter schools continue to be a significant cost to the school district. I did note that with the reform we are getting, it is trending that we will be paying less per student. However, with the charter school numbers going up, it's still reflected as a large impact to the budget. And then, of course, special education costs and the transportation costs are on those. And those are just things that I wanted to draw attention to, that those are the largest items in our budget year to year. Okay, next slide.
I guess want to ask about the CTC renovation. We just adjusted the payments of bonds to the blend, and we lowered the cost of the project X million dollars. I know we were tossing around 300 million, but could you just give us a more definite answer next week of what that looks like now?
So included in this budget, I have $300,000 that would basically be a transfer over to that capital reserve fund, but that's just a like placeholder in the budget. So we are building $300,000 into this budget for 26-27 to go towards that CTC bond payment when it comes.
And that's based on the revised figure that we
That's what
expect.
I'm asking, is
for
the
CTC.
revised figure.
Yeah, we'll actually go over that I just got them from the CTC director. We'll actually go over it at the CTC meeting as well. They gave us back two scenarios. Obviously, you could go anywhere in between in the end with it. They gave us the minimum one, or the one that the $80 million one, and then I think it was the $100 million one. They gave us costs and it's projected out by district, so I can I can attach this as informational for next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask about transportation costs?
Yes.
Is
Just-
it mic on?
Yeah.
Okay.
How does that compare to last year? I mean, I know this was our first year with the new contract, a new, bus provider, and then with fuel prices, of course, going up. I was wondering how those compared from last year to this year.
Right. So I believe this is our second year with Christ. But for the first 2 years, we negotiated in kind of like a locked increase. And now next year we will be going to I think it's the CPI. I always mess up those initials. So I believe we are looking at a larger hit for next year. And obviously then it's reflected a year in lag into your reimbursement for the state, but not ever fully reimbursed for the increase. So we are looking at increased costs. And one other area that we were kind of hit in was our extracurricular and athletic transportation. So DB Fisher did it at a very reasonable low cost rate, which obviously didn't work out long-term for them as a business stability. But so those were some of the things that need to increase. And yes, we do purchase the fuel, and we have a formula where we kind of split that with Christ. I don't know if you remember that. And yes, fuel is increasing as well. So yes, transportation costs continue to go up, and obviously you're always in a 1 year lag from the state, and it doesn't seem like it ever makes you really fully reimbursed or anything like that. And I can get you specific numbers if you'd like for next week.
And Leon, at the end of the day, never really fully reimbursed, but what percentage would you say were reimbursed at some?
I'll have to look into that. I can get you those numbers. It's it varies greatly based on number of students on the bus, miles traveled. So I can give you overall, like, this is what we
Yeah.
spend per year. This is what we get
I'm just
reimbursed.
curious, like, what the
Yes.
general list.
I can get you those numbers. Sorry, I'm just taking a note quick. And this is a slide showing the salary trends over the year. And you can see in 21 to 22 to 22, 23, it was not a significant increase. And that's when we were moving into the new elementary school. And, for the time period before that, Dr. Messinger and I said that, we wanted to do everything through natural attrition and combining of the schools. So you kind of see that reflected on this graph here. And then also, over the years, we've also taken we are having trouble hiring some of our custodians, so we've kind of outsourced that as well. So some of it was a shifting of an expense, but you can also see here on the graph as salary trends upward, and every single year it's between about a 3 to 4% increase on here, and that's how it's reflected on the graph. Next slide. Next slide, thanks. And this is a slide where I just wanted to show our annual debt payment and what it's been each year. And it's been significant over the last 4 to 5 years as we've done constructions and we've taken on more and more bond payments. So we went from $1.9 million in 21, 22 to we are looking at $6.5 million for the 26, 27 year budget. And then we have one more, what I like to refer to as a hump year, where it increases and then it kind of levels off for us. So that was a significant item that was built into our budget. You can obviously see there some of those years from 23 to 24 to 24, 25, like that was a lot. And, the school district, we had to figure this out ourselves, how to afford this, because during the 2015, 2016 state budget, as we all know, Plan Con funding was ended. The lawmakers eliminated that reimbursement for the school districts. And yes, they honored any school district who already had in place construction projects that were approved up to 2015. So they are still paying out on those, but they're not paying out on anything new. It is not currently funded. It would not qualify. Our construction projects were not able to be submitted because there's not funding there for us to get that reimbursement. But just for funsies, I used the 2015 formula and where we were at back then to see that if this was being funded by the state and we were receiving reimbursement, we would have $1.8 million coming from the state to help us offset that payment for 26, 27. And that would be significant relief for the school district. Unfortunately, Plan Con is not available for our school district at this time. It's not available for any school district at this time. It's not being funded. Okay, next slide. And this is my last slide. This brings to a close my presentation, but these are just things that will be future budgeting considerations I wanted to put up there as we move forward. Obviously, next year we will be negotiating with NLEA, so that will obviously be a question mark for our 27, 28 budget moving into that. Our debt payment increase, which I just showed you on the last slide, you know, and the CTC renovation costs, which we've already discussed as well, but those are some things that are question marks for our future budgets as well. And then obviously our ongoing property maintenance to keep up things here and make sure that everything is maintained and in working order. And then also just something that's always on all of our minds, I'm sure, and Shen shares these a lot with our, like the state mandates that come down to us. And many of them are unfortunately unfunded for us. So, you know, there are requirements put on the school district where we need to hire additional staff, additional tasks, additional things that we need to do. And it is on the school district to fund those. A lot of times it doesn't come with additional funding from the state. So I'll take any questions at this time or discussion. I guess I kind of stole that from you. Sorry.
No.
It's the president's job to ask for discussion.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So you said that you were anticipating at least a small increase in state funding. That money that's going to come from the state that's increased, is that tied to mandates, or is that money that we can kind of spend in the general fund, or?
So it's still in that ready to learn fund where they do give us some specific requirements. And it was talked about at great lengths by advocates to allow us to give more, to give broader areas for school districts so that they can use that money, because all of that money came along and the funding came along because of the lawsuit for them for basic education. And when they give basic education funds, they don't really give you too many requirements. So now they're fulfilling their obligation, but they're giving us requirements, which many of the school districts who are arguing for the additional basic education funding money are now saying, but wait, you're giving us the money that you should have been giving to us, but you're giving it to us with these requirements. So that is being discussed up there, but no, we did not get a lot more in our basic education bucket. It is coming in, they're ready to learn, but I believe we'll be fine, but we'll find ways to put that to use on things that we need to in our general operating budget. But yeah, that continues to be an issue that is discussed largely.
And we would do that by funding, excuse me, funding the mandated budget lines and then reducing those budget lines to put them into other items that we could use that money for, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for example, special ed, if we get
Mhm.
money for special ed, we designate that for special ed, but then that allows us to move some of that special ed line to another line.
Correct.
It offsets.
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions? We'll give it a second. Okay. Guess if I say I'm going to give it a second, I should give it a second. Nothing else? Okay, great. Thorough presentation. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, any discussion for the committee regarding this? Obviously, it will be on discussion for next week, but is there any discussion this evening on that item? Okay, I would encourage everybody during the week, please take a very close look at the budget. If there's any questions, please email Dr. Messinger, Ms. Martin, let them know of any questions that you have. Let's make sure that we have a very thorough review and discussion next week. Okay. Anything else on that item? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on.
Okay, 8.6 is our annual agreement with the New Story School. 8.7, it's that time of year. Our teacher contract moves teacher salaries approximately 3.5% this year. We typically try to match that for classified staff. It actually came out to 3.51%, no one getting below 3.5%. And then with that, we moved the chart that we use for new hires to 0.5%, 1% below the increase. Any questions on that?
Okay, do we want to move any of those items to discussion for next week?
I just have one quick question. I should just ask it now so we don't have to
Yeah.
move it to discussion. The staff increase, I think I've asked this before. So everybody gets the same amount. So you don't have any kind of annual job performance rating?
Not everybody gets the same amount. In the past, that 3.51 has actually been a little higher. It depends on the, there were a few that were out of skew with colleagues across the county. And so over the last couple of years, we've tried to balance that out a little bit.
When you say not the same amount, you don't mean, it just says the same percentage. So do you mean like a dollar amount when you're saying that? They're not getting the same
No.
dollar amount?
No, in this contract, in this particular year, 3.5% is the total. No one is getting below a 3.5%. However, there are two individuals that we feel are paid below what the average salary would be. So theirs is slightly higher, making the total increase 3.51%.
Okay, I just mean like in general, is there any?
We
kind
don't
of-
have raises tied to performance reviews, even though each employee gets an evaluation.
What would happen if they had a poor, I mean, it's either you get 3.5 or you get 5.
It would
kind of
be,
thing? It's not like.
it would be an improvement plan or disciplinary action, yes,
Okay.
but not tied to wages. We've never done that. I mean, it's not typically common, but it has been done in education in the past. It's just not something Northern Lebanon has, as long as I've been here, to the best of my knowledge, we've never done that. You might remember before me, I don't know.
Not in my 10 to 11 years has it been done here, which, I mean, I came from private sector, so that was new to me, but it's the way I believe that most school districts also function, and it's very common across the board.
Yeah. If it were from a teacher standpoint, it would have to be placed in the CBA. The classified has a handbook, and I would recommend if we were to look at that, it would be placed in the handbook, but it is not currently in there. Anything else on that?
Okay, other questions? Okay. Hearing no other input, we'll leave those on consent for next week. Okay,
We also, it's time for the Act 93X value, which we also do the same time of year. This particular year, that is just moving the matrix, the midpoint, the matrix. And the X value then, we're recommending 2.5% to move that chart for the 26-27 school year.
okay. Any questions? No, okay.
And then the Act 93 agreement is also, it is time for that to be redone. This agreement would go from 2026 to 2032.
Questions or discussion? Okay, we will leave those on consent then. All right, we'll move to item 9, instructional approvals.
Okay, and I'm sure you didn't have time to look through every single one of those, but those are curriculum that were prepared this year that will be up for approval. Certainly, we can move those to discussion in case there's any questions as you have a chance to look through them this week. Most of them are foreign language, world languages, or ELA.
Questions? Okay, we'll leave that on consent, but by all means, during the week, as you review, please let us know if you have any questions or if this needs to move to discussion. Okay, last one, then in 9, list of graduates.
Yeah, 2026 class of 2026 graduation list is there for approval.
Okay.
Just a clarification on that one. Believe we'll need to add the words pending meeting graduation requirements to
Thank
that
you.
line item.
Where does one, we had a smaller class last year, right? 165 is larger.
A little bit larger than we've
Yeah.
had recently. That doesn't mean all of them will walk, though.
Sure, yeah. Okay. All right, we'll leave that on consent then. Okay, facilities.
Okay. sidewalk over on the high school side, School Drive. This is work that we had removed from the original bid because we were seeking a grant. We did not receive that grant, and therefore are responsible for the work to be done on the School Drive side. That includes sidewalk, curbing, and resurfacing of that road. We went through a change order process to look at the cost. It was then analyzed by Fidavia, who thinks that if we were to go to bid, it would actually be more. If we do go to bid and it is more, by the time we get through that process, this would not be available for us to take. Dr. East, am I saying that correctly? Anything else I'm missing? Okay. So this would need board approval from a change order standpoint, but we believe it will be the cheaper option based on Fidavia's assessment.
Okay, any questions?
Where are we with our available funds and change order account?
You going to get that? Wait, are you getting the change order funds or are you getting the? Oh. I will get that to you and we can move this to discussion.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Did I hear a question over here?
That was gonna be my same
Okay,
question,
okay.
with, yeah, what's left in the contingency fund?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, and the other allotments as well. Some of the soft cost stuff, the overall project costs is probably what we should also be giving you as well, compared to what we budgeted.
Okay, so that will be on discussion then for next week. All right. I think that covers the agenda, Dr. Missing, or anything else?
I mean, we do have some dates to remember.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that you have an election ballot for the Lancaster Lebanon IU13 Board of Directors. Director Murray is listed there amongst others. You need to, if you would please fill that out and return it by the next meeting. You can either do it tonight and we'll get it, or you can give it to Mrs. Hope during the week, or you can bring it with you next week and we'll collect it then.
Okay, great. Anything else to bring to the board this evening?
What about caps and gowns?
Sorry.
That is probably not.
Yeah, Director Klein mentioned
Yeah.
that too. I'm going to check with the high school and see if they have those here so we can get them out next week. Because there is a meeting on the 2nd yet that would be the day before the graduation, but if they have them, we'll just bring them over for next week.
Okay, all right. Great discussion this evening. And with consent, then this committee meeting is adjourned. It's the 5th, right? It is the 5th.